Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the September 22nd, 2020 Dysart Council meeting. We'll now call the meeting to order, and the first item of business would be roll call from the clerk, please.
All right. Councillor Clark?
I'm present.
Councillor Donaldson?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Kennedy?
Present.
Councillor McKechnie?
Unmute. That he is present.
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. Councillor Smith?
Present.
Councillor Wood Roberts?
Present.
Mayor Roberts?
And present.
Perfect. All are here.
All are here. Thank you. So the next item is to adopt the agenda. If I can have a mover and a seconder to adopt our agenda today. Councillor Clark and Councillor Wood Roberts. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Dysart et al. Held on September 22nd, 2020 be approved as presented. All in favor? And that is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or nature thereof? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting of August 25th. Council, and I need a mover and seconder for those. Deputy Mayor Kennedy and Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that the minutes of August 25th, 2020 regular council meeting be adopted as circulated. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Next up, we always include this mayor's and deputy mayor's update to fill you in on things happening in and around the county and what else Pat and I have been doing. And today I just want to say it is the first day of fall. It's absolutely beautiful here in Dysart with the fall colors starting to come out, although awfully crisp, cold mornings. And, you know, all in all, I think we had a really good summer up here, all things considered. We didn't know how things were going to be. And it's nice to see our Main Street busy. It is a little bit nerve-wracking going into this fall season and into the winter season with COVID still very much amongst us. We know on the weekend that the province made it effective immediately, the reduction of the size of gatherings. And unfortunately, I had to make a decision and interpret that to mean that an event that was to take place in the park had to be canceled. You know, we're all doing our best, and like I say, we're not out of the woods yet. So everybody stay vigilant, and we'll probably be meeting like this for quite some time. But I want to congratulate everybody, the students back in school and businesses taking place here. Everybody's doing a great job here in Dysart. On tomorrow County Council agenda is the shoreline preservation bylaw coming forward, and also the process to be laid out for public consultation. On the weekend, I had someone say to me, well, this isn't a very good time of year to discuss the bylaw, but with the it's been around, we've been discussing it for a couple of years. We were well underway back in February and March. And so everybody will have an opportunity to comment once the county approves the draft. Pat and I have also been busy and will be over the next couple of days attending some virtual AGMs. And I think that's great that lake associations are still having to do their due diligence and their corporate mandate by having AGMs, and I appreciate the opportunity. Some we did not attend, but my thought was that we would maybe write something that could go out to all lake associations regarding just a little update of what's happening within Dysart to do with things like our septic reinspection program, the shoreline bylaw itself, and other things that are taking place in Dysart. So that's all I have for now, and I will turn it over to Deputy Mayor Kennedy for his update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few things. The Welcome Center, I think if anybody's been driving around town for the last few months, they've seen this slow process of moving forward with this project. Happy to say that the foundation was poured, I believe, yesterday. And I'll be meeting with Spencer, our project manager, and staff this afternoon or later on this week to discuss when the next steps are. Just want to really reinforce that we have taken every opportunity to use local contractors on this project. Municipality is acting as the general contractor on this, and Spencer Matthews is our project manager. So we've been really diligent on trying to get local contractors, and I think we all know how busy they are, which may contribute to somewhat of the little bit slow getting going on this project and getting it moving. But I sometimes think Spencer is a master at trying to herd cats, as they say, trying to get these local contractors to get them back on the job site. So really, this is the next phase. Now that the foundation's on, the rest of it should start to look like a building very, very quickly. Also, the recovery committee has been meeting, and I think, as I said last month, we've met with the BIA, and then this last week we met with the Chamber of Commerce. Had a really, really good session with Jennifer, the executive director, and Andrea Strano, the president. Looking forward to working with that organization more in the future. And also, our meeting notes from that recovery committee are available online on the Civic web. So if anybody wants to follow along, they're not formal minutes; they are just meeting notes, because it is a little bit informal of a task force reporting to the Emergency Operations Center. On the county level, a couple of interesting things coming up. The off-road vehicle bylaw was passed in principle at the county during committee of the whole, and you'll see that coming forward at Dysart is to allow some new vehicles that are permitted by the province July the 1st to be used on municipal and county roads. So that will be coming forward at the county tomorrow, and later on our agenda, I suspect next month in the committee of the whole possibly. The other big thing on everybody's mind is internet. And we really want to point people towards the report that's on tomorrow morning. It's tabled under the KURO partner report. And it's the next step in the assessment of stage 1. As you know, the county has endorsed, supported all 4 proponents for going forward with their proposals for helping internet and broadband here in the county. And there's a little link to the Government of Canada website way down in Appendix B. You have to search for it. But it's kind of an interesting thing. And if the county supports the proposal, it's going to cost the county $3,000 a year to subscribe to this. But if you go on this website, actually I did it last night, and actually just put in your address. It tells you what services are available, but it also will help highlight what's lacking in your area. So I think it's an important tool. It's going to help identify priorities. But probably the best approach, to my mind, and what a couple of lake associations have started doing, is getting a hold of their local MPPs and MPs and really pushing for it. I believe that this is the squeaky wheel time. We know that we are a priority, but we have to make sure. I just got some correspondence from Tammy here the other day about Harcourt Park, sort of the forgotten partner here in Dysart. I really urge them to get formal and right. And if you are a senior vice president or president of a company and you know somebody in cabinet, get a hold of them too. We know it's coming, but now the louder we are, the better we'll be. I guess that's about it for this morning. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Well, thank you. And it's funny how watching on the screen, as we're not sitting in a room, and as soon as you started talking about the internet, every councillor kind of just went like that. And I think everybody's ears are wide open, and it's an excellent point to bring about, make your voice heard, and voices that are heard in a collective organization or a group or a lake association or anything like that are even louder. So very good point. And it is extremely high priority for all of us here in Haliburton County. We do not want to get left behind, which we already are. We know that there's also the whole self-service thing as well. Okay, so we'll move along on the update, and I think the first thing we'll do, we do have a delegation that's scheduled for 9:10. So I believe we'll go to planning, which is item A, 6A, and we'll bring in our delegate, and we'll bring in the planning staff. So just bear with the administrator for 2 seconds while she gets that ready. And you can get your agenda item open on 6A. Okay, and I'm just waiting, I believe, still for Mr. Webster.
Hello.
Okay, and you're online, so we can hear you. So everyone is present. So thank you, Stephen, and it's good to talk to you again. We had a good first chat, as you know, last 2 weeks ago on our committee of the whole day, and some questions, comments, and discussion took place over your proposal. And just to clarify for anyone listening to the meeting, that this is a site plan agreement, not a zoning application, that this property is fully zoned for all permitted uses that are proposed. So that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the site plan. So what I think I'll do is turn it to, I believe, Chris Orson first, to just bring us up to date. And then Stephen, I'll let you speak to your proposal as well, okay?
Excellent.
So
Look
we'll
forward
start
to
with
it.
Chris.
Perfect. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The council members have previously seen this site plan as mentioned. The subject property, which is located at 10 Hops Drive, which is along County Road 21 across from the Halliburton Lumber. The developer is proposing the commercial development and is currently going through the site plan agreement process as mentioned. As noted in the report, there was some discrepancy related to the required work cost estimates, which will be up for discussion today. Therefore, based on the report, staff are seeking the following direction from council, which would be to approve final cost estimate amounts, which determine the amount of security to be held by the municipality for the development. That council is satisfied with the proposed development and that meets the intent of council's vision for the built form sort of guidelines, and that council is satisfied with the proposed development. Staff would like to note that it is in support of the development and that the site plan agreement is very close to being finalized with the direction of the above items from council and a few outstanding items to be completed prior to bringing the final site plan agreement forward to council. Staff will now open the floor up to council for discussion of the development. And as mentioned, the developer is online as well to discuss any questions related to the development.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And actually what I thought we'd do is a little bit differently before we open it up to staff, or to council, pardon me. We've already had an opportunity for discussion. I'd like to hear from Stephen, and I know that you were able to watch our council committee, the whole meeting 2 weeks ago, and you've been in discussion with Chris. So maybe I'm going to just turn it over to you to talk about your development and talk about your rationale for your cost estimates on the servicing and anything else you wish to discuss, and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor and Council. I appreciate the time. I wish I was there to see everyone in person, as I'm sure you all wish the same. As far as the securities go, I've been really trying to consider this as first of all, I do believe the municipality needs securities and they need to protect themselves. And I respect that. And so what I did is I went through the numbers that my engineer, and just so everyone knows, I had to provide projected numbers, and then the municipality's engineer provided their numbers, and the difference was on 50% was $50,000 in difference in the amount required for requested for security. So I'm looking at the work that needs to be done, and much of the work has to be done even before the development even gets out of the ground. So something that I thought would probably appease, or I would hope would appease both council staff and myself, is that we put up the security number of $150,000, but the drawdown only gets done, I'll say, backwards from your number. So maybe an easier way of saying that is, if using your number, there's $100,000 worth of work that still needs to be completed, then I can only draw down $50,000, even if on my numbers it shows that I've done $75,000. So you're protected on the back end. I'm satisfied on the front end, and we just proceed forward that way. I guess the first question is, was that clear?
Okay, so that's a good place to stop. And and see if that was clear to counselors, and if to staff also. That's a very unusual, I'm not sure how we manage that or facilitate that, the drawdown, but so I will open up the floor for counselors and also staff on the securities. Or is there another option out there? So Deputy Mayor Kennedy?
It's funny, now we're talking about 50% securities on our number, or is there, does council have the ability to change that 50 to say 40% on our number? And then the difference in the ask is negligible. It's within $5,000 or $6,000, and we just move on with this project and get Stephen shovels in the ground here. I'm wondering, is that a reasonable accommodation or not?
Yeah, that was actually something I asked 2 weeks ago. So Chris, is that something?
I mean, it's really up to council at this point. We've done our numbers. We've had the discussion with the developer, and again, there was the discrepancies where we had our municipal engineer look at it. However, the developer had staff actually go through it, and staff provided the numbers forward based on sort of the market value and everything else. So that was through our public works manager, actually did those numbers for us, and we came to that cost estimate. So which was the 201,000, so roughly the $48,000 to $50,000 difference. So I would leave it up to council if they feel comfortable with that. That's their decision, quite honestly. We have our numbers, and we stand by our numbers. So at the end of the day, it's up to council.
So what the proposal is to stand by our numbers, but change the percentage to equate to what Stevens is. It will make the drawdowns a little bit easier to manage if we do that. We're not taking 50%, that we are taking 42.3%, whatever. I'm sorry, Barbara's on the line. She can probably get a calculator out and help us a little bit. But to say that our numbers, we believe, but we are willing to negotiate to reduce the percentage so that as you do those services and request the drawdowns back, it is based on a different percentage. And I am totally willing to do that. So I want to see if there is support from Councillor Kennedy's and my suggestion to stick with our numbers, plug in the percentage in the site plan agreement that equates to Mr. Webster's numbers. Is there support for that with the show of hands? It's not a vote, it's just I need to see you. Well, I think we've just, and no, there's a question. Okay, Councillor Smith, please.
So thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question. Is the amount of deposit something that council has generally negotiated in the past, or have we been mostly firm on our numbers?
We have negotiated in the past.
So we're not setting a precedent here that now everybody's going to be okay.
Although we've rarely had such a discrepancy, I have to say, between the two engineered plans, but there have been other things that have been done in more pre-consultation examples. So yes, the answer is yes. So with that being said, are you fair that we could move on with that? As Councillor or Deputy Mayor Kennedy may still have a point to add. Yes.
Yeah, just, and in all fairness to both Mr. Webster's engineers and our staff, I think every time we open up a tender or an RFP, we see a discrepancy in bids. So I think it's a fair compromise with the proposal that you and I have. Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll leave it to however the math calculation works. That it's our numbers from what our engineer says, but we will alter the percentage in the site plan agreement. Okay, so let's.
Sorry, so I just have a question. Is that going to be 40%? I just want to be clear on what the.
Well, that's where I said I think we'll need Barbara's calculation. I first of all probably can't do it that easily, but even I could just use the excuse that I'm chairing the meeting right now, so I'm not able to do the math. But what, as I said, it could be 43%.
If it's 40%, it's a little higher. than my numbers, then I'm fine with that.
Okay, well, I think we've just negotiated that then. 40%, we'll stick with that. And whatever the number that comes in at 40%. We do want to see this go forward, and we have a responsibility, as staff remind us, as counselors, as council, to make a decision that mitigates risk to the corporation of the township. And that's what we're doing here. We want to see this development go forward, and I think the numbers are still significant enough that it's not a harm to you, but also that I feel confident in that this is not putting the municipality at risk, and that's what we have to talk about. So let's talk about, that's great, that was good. Let's talk about the satisfaction with the development and the other things like that had come forward in our discussion 2 weeks ago. So Chris, back to you on some of those things. Sorry, it's hard to.
Yeah, so I believe it's just really up for discussion right now through council, that if council is satisfied with the proposed development. So we're mostly just talking about the facade and stuff. As for the building locations and stuff, those are pretty much set in stone now. But I was just, if the discussion is going to be more so just around any of the facades or anything like that, and if there's any, additional landscaping or anything like that. But beyond that, that's sort of what staff's looking for, just to ensure that council is satisfied with the development, that it meets sort of our guidelines and our vision for the town, as for development and that visual feel as well. So that's sort of the second one.
Okay, so Stephen, I'll leave it to you, as I did reference a business that was down the road from where this proposal is. A few years ago when that went in, we were able to request a monument sign. So one thing that we were looking for signage, and I know that what will be going in, your tenants going in there will be corporations who have logos and colors already planned out, but is there any way you can address those concerns to give it a, for all intent purposes, a Halliburton look, or to do anything on the site that would make it look cottage country?
Yeah, I guess my first thing is I would love to. I would love to build a post and beam building, and I know you're not asking for that. I'm going to the extreme here. But from the time that I've started this project, which was like almost 3 years ago now, to today, I think we can all agree that times have changed. I still have my lead tenant that still wants to go there. My other tenants have come and gone and come back around, but different economics. So it's getting squeezed on all sides here, which is difficult to say the least. It's a very it's going to be a difficult project to come out of the ground to start. And I guess that's just from an economic standpoint. So doing anything that requires additional cost money, and I'm trying to pinch the corners wherever I can now to create some economic feasibility here. So that's one side, and that's my issue. It's definitely not council's issue, but it's something to be aware of. As far as the facade goes, if I'm downtown, and even if I am downtown, I don't believe there's a consistency. There's local tenants that have something along of what your request is, but all the national players in town have their prototypical signage, and definitely in my area, which is a little further out of the downtown. What I'm proposing is pretty much exactly what everybody else has in the area. So I'm, to be the one development that starts to get picked out on this during these times, more projects are getting mothballed than being built, and I'm still trying to figure out a way to get this thing built. And with all due respect, I need all of your help to make it happen right now. it's tricky. So that's a facade thing, and if you want to deal with that right now, that's great. I have a timing issue that I'd also like to discuss. If you'd like me to deal with that after, that's
Sure,
that's
well,
fine.
I'll just see if there's any comment, and that's what I was saying. It is in a different location. Right now, currently, it's a rather abandoned looking piece of property, and I think the development on there will add to that area. It is a commercial business area. The only thing that I really encourage you is, and it's not shown on the site plan agreement, is that certainly the restaurant portion have a bicycle rack somewhere. People do bike in that area a lot.
Yeah.
The other location was asked to put in a bike rack, and they did. It's a simple fix, but we do promote active transportation. And so people should be able to cycle or walk to that location. So I do see Deputy Mayor Kennedy has a question on this.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I don't think we're looking for post and beam, and I know that you use that example as an extreme. I'd actually just like to look down the street a little bit. Home Hardware did a little bit of facade work on the front of their building. Looks quite nice. I mean, it is still a boxy kind of box store. And then also the Garden Retirement suggestion of council by adding some wood on it did a beautiful job, in my opinion, of the entranceway and the railings for all their apartments. So I don't think we're looking for a radical change here, just some influence if we could. You're looking at, I'm just looking at the one diagram, and unfortunately it's hard to figure out which building is which, but even a small canopy over the front door that had a bit of a wood on it would be go a long ways. This council, I think, is trying to move forward with trying to keep things cottagey, and in that flavor. And we're not looking for major dollars. I certainly understand the challenges you're going through just to trying to get development here. So I'd love to work with you on some ideas on that. Thank you.
So I think the idea is it's not going to hold at the site plan agreement, that we just ask for these things to be considered as you find your tenants and secure those tenants goes forward. And having some nice landscaping on that property currently as a buffer to the one side, to where the appliance store is, and also to the other side, it'll really complete that property, having some nice landscaping. I know the restaurant has a little patio that can be done up, quite nicely. So it's as to be considered. And we don't have anything concrete and solid to hold you to that as you secure, your tenants.
Okay, well, thank you. As far as the bike rack goes, I think that's a no-brainer. I think it's something that's, in all honesty, I'm surprised I didn't have it on there to start with, so I apologize about that. The facade, like I said, everything adds to a cost, which, again, I'd love to change that. And I guess I would consider it, but there's some other elements that are at play here. And I guess it kind of moves us into the timing side of things. So a year and a half ago, or a little in that period, through this process, I've been asked to do a Hydro G, which I understand is something I have to do, and that's fine. I was honest and upfront at the time, and I said, I have always done my developments, of which there's 17 of them, on municipal water. And so this is my first time I'm doing a Hydro G. So what do I need to do? And the answer was, your engineer should know. Okay, my engineer should know. My engineer did the work, came back, sorry, that's not good enough. That took a long time to get there. Then I asked the same question again. We need an updated Hydro G. So we found out we needed to drill a well, which I did. We did a pump test, which I did. My engineer did a study on the water pumping and water drawing on the site, and it's come back, I guess, was it a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago? That's not good enough. It doesn't meet some of the requested points. So I went back to my engineer and said, like, is this real or what's going on? And he said, well, what they're requesting is guideline based, and the guidelines are just that, guidelines. So you have things like, you know, if I was building a 6-story residence next to a Tim Hortons, then, you know, the 6-story residence might be drawing all the water away from the Tim Hortons, and the Tim Hortons isn't going to have something, any ability to have water. I'm not building anything that big, and I'm certainly not building anything that's drawing a whole lot of water. And I'm being requested to review neighbors' properties, which they're not obligated to give me access to those wells. So I feel like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. It's going to take, I would assume, like anything in these things, it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get the Hydro-G done. At the last time, it took 3 months to review it through some fault of my own, but it did take 3 months to review it. And we're moving into the fall now. We're moving into the winter. The snow is going to be flying soon. And the reality is if I have to start this project in the spring, I don't know that it's going to go forward because, as we all know, there's half loads. It's a further increase in cost to start the development. I need to be in the ground and at least, get the groundwork and foundation work and servicing prior to snow flying. And as it stands right now, I don't see how I can do it. I don't see how we can get there.
Okay.
If I have to go and do another Hydro-G. So if I get to the spring and I can't build before then I'm not in the ground for, call it next August, at least at the earliest. And then I don't even know if the project works, so.
Okay, well, I hear your frustration, but I also know that in a telephone discussion with you quite some time ago, I can't recall the exact date, but we said that we gave you permission for your engineer to talk to our peer review engineer. And it's not that you have to do another Hydro-G study, it's that it's incomplete. So there are still parts of it are done and parts of it are not done. And that's something that Dysart can't negotiate on. And I know that working without town water is a challenge. When we had our first condo development here, it was seen as, a bit of a challenge up front, but we now have, through that same developer, 3 condo units. It is possible, but it's not something that council can accept an incomplete Hydro-G study. Can we talk to our building department? Is there such thing as provisional foundation permit as you complete to get the Hydro-G and you start a project? I don't know. But that's something that we can't negotiate. We have to have the complete Hydro-G study. Those guidelines are our protection, and the neighboring property owners in that area's protection. So it isn't just quantity and quality. It does factor in the use on those other places. So, we're at a bit of a crossroads with that. I'm not sure if we're able to move forward.
My engineer has made 3 phone calls to Paul and has not heard back from him. So that's another thing. I was hoping to have some information prior to this meeting. There was calls last week and a call yesterday. So I need the communication to flow both ways.
Okay. So, Chris, I don't know if you recall when that meeting was. I feel like that was like January, February that we talked on the phone. To let the engineers talk, to make sure that your engineer knew what was required. And maybe you can speak to the risk of what council would do if we accepted an incomplete Hydro-G study.
Yeah, so like the staff is kind of bounded by this too, and that as Mr. Webster noted, yes, they are sort of guidelines. However, these guidelines are the minimum guidelines. So anything below that threshold, you really need to identify as to why you're not doing those particular studies through that guideline. That's based on, and our engineer has done quite a few of these and reviewed quite a few of these. And it's through the study of the official plan policy 3.3.2 that it demonstrates that you need to demonstrate that there's sufficient quality and quantity of water services for the proposed development without impacting adjacent sites as well. So that's part of the guidelines. So in our respect, we have to ensure based on that it doesn't affect any of the adjacent properties. That and I know Mr. Webster did mention that it may not be a high use, but these tests are to be done typically during the summer season as well to ensure that during dry seasons and such that they're not pulling water from adjacent properties and affecting theirs. As for the MO or the ministry's guidelines, as per the report provided by the developer, our engineer has identified that it doesn't meet some of the guidelines as identified, and that the report itself even identifies, so the report provided by the developer even identifies that it wasn't complete, and it did recommend that some additional testing be completed by the developer to address these guidelines. But again, it's staff's in the same boat where we need to ensure that we have this to ensure that it doesn't affect, and that's our stance in it. And we need to protect the assets of the municipality as well as adjacent properties to ensure there isn't any effect. And who knows, there may not be, but I'm not an engineer and I don't write the guidelines. So it's one of those things we need to follow those. And that's kind of what we're bounded by, the policies and guidelines.
So Chris, and then I'll hear from Stephen and some other counselors. If everything else, we've just negotiated the securities and everything else in the site plan agreement is complete, can we send that off to our lawyer based on waiting for a complete Hydro-G study so that we can start the ball at least rolling? Like, is there everything, because that becomes an appendix, right?
So yeah, so staff has already provided the draft has provide the draft agreement to the developer. The developer provides some comments back, which we're just looking at just to make sure that there isn't any discrepancies in the site plan agreement. But that draft is pretty much ready to go, and it would just be, once everything's complete, it would just be providing that to our solicitor, and then he would just pull that to, put the plans in, put the Hydro-G together, and then ready to go to bring back to council for final approval.
Well, that's what I'd like to see, is that we start the ball rolling. We don't wait till we get that Hydro-G that we can start the ball rolling. But Deputy Mayor Kennedy had a question.
Yeah, my understanding is guidelines are just that. They're not policy. They're not requirements. So I'm hoping that we can move forward with this, with that as a condition of final occupancy, or whatever the correct term is, that a successful Hydro-G report be completed. To me, it's I'd like to see this project move forward, and as Mr. Webster says, he's a year away now, and especially with Chris saying it has to be done in the summertime, it definitely puts some heat on this project to get it moving.
So if I may, there's a couple of things. I'm not an engineer, but I do know I own 5 acres of wetland behind me. So quantity, first of all, there's a couple of things. One, my well is only 50 feet deep and produces a ton of water. The wells in the area that my understanding that my engineer has identified are 120 feet. So don't know if they're even drawing on the same type of water, same source of water. But again, I'm not an engineer. And the other side of it is, as we all know, and we've all been involved in development, you have working drawings, and then you have as-built drawings. So when I finish my project, I have to provide as-built drawings to the municipality that says, oh, you know what, this cross-section is different because of a site condition, or a foundation is different because of a site condition, or something is different because of a site condition. The site condition can also affect the well and my neighbor's well. And to be fair, I'm not interested in affecting my neighbor's well. I want to be a good neighbor. But the difference could be that, maybe I need a holding tank, or maybe, and that's something that would be done throughout the construction while it's being monitored. And as Chris noted, yeah, my engineer said there's further studies that need to be done during the process. I'm not trying to not do this. I'm not trying to develop something that's going to be bad for A, my site, or B, my neighbor's site. I just think it's something that has to be done in concert while it's being done. And right now, if Chris is saying I need to wait until summer to do this flow test, then there's your answer. I'm not in the ground until next August at the earliest,
Chris,
if
go
at
ahead.
all.
So it's not me saying that it has to be done in the summer. It was actually through your engineer, in the report that said that that's typically when these tests are conducted, and it was noted in the report that that was a recommendation that these additional testing be completed. So therefore, I'm just going by the report and then our engineer's review saying that these are the recommended additional testing should be done. So again, staff is in that position, and we can leave it up to council if however they would like us to take this forward. I guess that's if we want to add that on for direction to staff as to how we need to go forward with this.
Okay, and I want to hear from Jeff. He had his hand up, and then from other councillors if they're comfortable to what to do here. Jeff?
And I just want to say, Steph, I have some concerns with proceeding before the developer has provided a study that shows that there's adequate drinking water on the site that to not only satisfy the development but not affect neighboring properties. As per the municipal engineer, there was no direct correlation in that study. There was not enough pump tests. There was not enough wells used to show that there was no correlation between those tests and the actual development, and there was no correlation showing any effect on the neighboring property owners. So staff certainly have those concerns. As Chris outlined, the official plan section 3.3.2 requires this as part of the Hydro-G study for development within the Halberton Village urban policy area. So certainly we do have some concerns there, and I just wanted to outline those. Staff continue to outline the policy, and that is our role. And going back to Stephen's original comments with regards to the Hydro-G, I just want him to know we have made some changes internally. Historically, we always have required the developers, engineers to determine what is required for a Hydro-G test, because as you know, staff are not engineers. But reaching out to our own engineer, he has been more than willing to talk to developers ever since then, just to provide that, have that discussion and provide any direction or any requirements that are needed for that Hydro-G test. And once we outlined that to the developer, that conversation never did take place until the last week or so that the developer tried to reach out. So I just want to.
Happened.
Well, it's unfortunate the two
It hasn't happened.
talked some time ago, because we did give permission for the two engineers to talk, and I think from our end we made it very clear this is the detailed report. Again, dealing in a town that does not have town water, this is probably our biggest risk, not the risk of the securities of accepting something. So I go back to, can we move this forward to lawyers pending final signing of the site plan agreement, waiting for that, and making sure that, and I would accept one that was done in September. Can we expedite the incomplete portions of the Hydro-G study so that when we have that, we can continue?
And I can answer that. As Chris mentioned, there is a draft agreement already prepared. I think the final remaining items that need to be addressed in that agreement are the Hydro-G information, as well as the work cost estimates. So it's great, after today, we'll have one of those items satisfied. Council staff can bring back an agreement, and council can agree to it in principle, subject to that the clerk and mayor won't execute that document until certain items are complete. So that certainly is an option. Yes, if you'd like us to bring back an agreement to maybe committee of the whole or to the next council meeting in September, we can do that. Or sorry, October.
Yeah, just looking at the current resolution that we have here. So the actual site plan agreement comes back to council, or says the council directs staff regarding final work cost estimates that will be included into the site plan agreement. So we did agree to that. I'd just like to see the ball rolling, and in the meantime, I still think that remaining portion of the Hydro G study could be done starting immediately. So sort of what Jeff had just said is that we have approval in principle. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you. Well, communication has to go both ways. Like I said, we reached out last week, and we reached out yesterday. I have not heard, or my engineer has not heard anything. Like in order to expedite, we need to have communications on both sides and have some clarity put forward. I have to rely on, as you have to rely on your engineers, I have to rely on my engineer. I had a half-hour conversation this morning with him, asking, hey, did you get a hold of the engineer? No, we haven't heard anything yet. All right. And went through the system, and he still believes his Hydro G is sufficient for now. And yeah, that it's agreed that there's some things that need some follow on, but it's follow on, and that's because it takes time just to get all of that information. There is really no concern about the quantity or quality. It's more or less just putting in data. He believes his data is good. And that's why he wanted to talk to your engineer last week, and we could be having a more constructive conversation today. But Paul never returned his call. So we need your help on that.
Yeah, Chris?
So two things. I can certainly reach out to Paul and make sure that I know it is a busy time, as we've discussed through the summer and fall. It is extremely busy for him. As noted, staff throughout this process, at least in my time working on this file, I have noted many times that it is okay for your engineer, even back in November, December, to contact our engineer. So, even though you have reached out in the last few weeks, I understand that. But it has been a duration where the engineers could have been talking to one another. However, that being said, I can certainly reach out to Paul to ensure that he can return the call, and that your two engineers can discuss this matter.
Yeah, I think we have, what's happened in the past is past. We're here today. It's September 22nd. We are in favor of this proposal. We are in favor of this development. I think we need to move it forward as best we can. And so I do have a resolution that's regarding the cost estimate. So I think we can agree on that. Staff know that we can send it to our lawyers, and we will have our commitment that we will get the two engineers to talk, but we do need the completed process. So we are expediting this as quickly as we can at this end, and you have our commitment that we will continue to do so. So I think that's all we can do for now. If when it comes back, the actual site plan agreement from our lawyer and the Hydro G studies is still not done, then that will be continued council discussion. Are they willing to accept it with an incomplete Hydro G? So we'll have that conversation then. We don't need to make that decision right now. I think if we send it to our lawyer, and is that sound like a plan?
Yeah. So I guess the direction would be that so staff will take that to the solicitor, have that completed in principle, and then we'll bring it back to council in October. October to have this discussion, and
we'll know more. Believe me, by this afternoon, I'm hoping those two engineers have time to talk. If they ever watch this on video, they'll say, "Stop talking about us." So we do want this, Stephen, and we're going to do our very best to get this going forward. Okay, so I do have,
Okay.
okay, I do have a resolution that basically, as I stated, it's just regarding the final work cost estimate. So if I could have a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Wood Roberts, seconded by Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that the report from the lands legally known as Concession 8 to 9, Part Lot 12, RP 19R-1658, Part 1, in the geographic township of Dysart, municipality of Dysart et al. Be received for information, and that council direct staff regarding final work cost estimate amounts that will be included into the site plan agreement. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you for joining us today, Stephen, and you have our commitment that we will do what we can at this end to move the project forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care of yourself. So we'll go back to the regular order of the agenda. Thanks. Actually, we have, I'm just thinking. We have the planning staff here. So if it's okay with council, we'll continue in the planning portion. Is that okay with the clerk too? Yeah. Why let them go in and go out? I got a thumbs up on that. All right. So item B, which is the Blue Heron boat launch.
Yes, thank you. At their meeting on September 8th, 2020, the Committee of the Whole passed a resolution recommending that council pass a bylaw to authorize the execution of a license of occupation agreement with the Blue Heron Boat Launch Area Association. The bylaw, or bylaw 2020-58, is attached for council consideration.
Okay, any questions on that? No, mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Kennedy and Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that council pass bylaw 2020-58, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a license of occupation agreement with the Blue Heron Boat Launch Area Association for use of part of the untraveled portion of Blue Heron Road and part of Block 21, Plan 633, designated as Part 1, Plan 19R-8046 in the geographic township of Guildford, municipality of Dysart et al. Be read a first, second, and third time, signed, and the corporate seal attached thereto. All in favor? Carried. Okay, item C.
The next item is also a returning file. It's a request for license of occupation along Mink Road on Long Lake. And council first viewed this request at their meeting on August 25th, 2020. At that meeting, council deferred a decision for more information. So just to give a bit of background on this file, a group of 5 property owners who have backlot development along Mink Road on Long Lake would like to enter into a license of occupation agreement with the municipality to permit 4 docks to be located on a municipally owned original road allowance that leads to water. The request is in response to a notice of violation that was received by the applicants from the bylaw officer for encroachment on municipal property. Given the history of the location of the docks, the applicants are requesting permission for continued occupancy under Section 2F of Policy 32, which is a policy that guides the use of municipal road allowances. Staff received a letter of some comments from a Ms. Beaujolais, and she submitted comments with regards to not only this request, but all future requests for use of road allowances. She had concerns regarding lake capacity, lake pollution, noise, safety, the zoning bylaw requirements, and preventing access to others who might use the road allowance for access to the lake. Staff share those concerns regarding the prevention of lake access. As per section 3.2.7 of the official plan, road allowances are to be preserved for lake access, not only by the public, but for future recreational opportunities and trail clubs. Long Lake is also well beyond its, the required recreational carrying capacity as outlined in the official plan. After the agenda was posted, the applicants have submitted some comments in support of their application. So I am going to go through and summarize their letter right now. The letter is with regards to their request to council to permit continued use of the docks on the municipal property. And they would like council to consider the following information. First, with regards to the location of the docks, the applicants note that the location consists of two separate parcels of land. First, a 66-foot wide concession road allowance and a municipally owned waterfront lot that is approximately half an acre in size. They note that the 66-foot road allowance has approximately 137 feet of lake frontage. This is due to the fact that the 66-foot road allowance does not intersect the lake at a 90-degree angle. This results in side yard setbacks for the docks that are well in excess of the minimum required distance. Moving on to the history of the docks, the applicant notes that the subdivision was completed around the west end of Long Lake and was originally developed in the early 1970s. Lot 1 was set aside at that time and not sold, and the backlot owners were granted a legal right-of-way on their deeds with no specific limitations included in those rights-of-way. They note that the Boland family purchased their lot, now identified as 1100 Mink Road, in 1973, and almost immediately built and installed a dock in that location where the dock remains today. They provide arguments with regards to environmental impacts. The 4 docks are floating docks. There are no cribs or any other structures on the shoreline. Each dock is only connected to the shoreline by way of a ramp, and with each ramp being about 3 or 4 feet wide. This results in an overall total of about 12 to 15 feet being in contact with the shoreline. Noteworthy also is that FOCA, or the Federation of Ontario Cottage Association, clearly states that floating docks by far have the least impact on shorelines. And they note that no vegetation has been removed during the installation of these docks. Moving on to exclusive use and implied possession, the applicant notes that there has never been any ownership, possession, or exclusive rights implied with regards to the property. The site is enjoyed by all backlot owners and any others that wish to do so. It is a public property for all to enjoy, and there have never been any disputes whatsoever. They provide comments with regards to taxation. They note that taxes are based on the MPAC assessment and township mill rate. Waterfront properties are assessed higher based on market value, not exclusive use of the lake. Also noteworthy they mention is that the 4 docks are enjoyed by all backlot owners, not solely the dock owners. Cumulatively, there are significant tax revenues paid by all backlot property owners for essentially the seasonal benefit of one waterfront lot that is neither private nor exclusive. To conclude, they note that the lakes are a public treasure for all to enjoy, and they have the utmost faith that council will agree. In closing, they note that as much as they would like to provide conclusive proof that the history of the docks date back to 1973, this will not be a simple task. After nearly half a century, records that substantiate proof are not easily obtained, especially in the midst of a global pandemic. They kindly request that in the light of the above, council grant the permit of occupancy. And I just want to clarify one thing. There was a lot of focus or discussion within their comments and other comments about that lot 1 on plan 490. And lot 1 is not part of the request before council. So the request is for a license of occupation for the original road allowance only. I'm happy to answer any questions about that lot or the road allowance, but I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, for that, and also for the letter that we received yesterday in the nick of time. But also, this is a really unique situation, and development like this would never happen today. You would never get a road and backlots. That's not the way things, any properties would be developed now. So I do feel that this is a very unique situation, and currently we don't have anything. So having a license of occupation for something would mitigate our risk in that regard. So I do think we have to use this as a bit of a one-off unique situation. Councillor Clark.
Jeff, lot 1, is there a dock on there at the current time?
I have not been to this site, but looking at the satellite imagery, there does not appear to be a dock on lot 1.
like, to me, the fellow that developed the area there had apportioned that lot one for that purpose, for the back lots to be able to access the lake. And that being the situation, it being a shared resource, what I'm thinking of is if a dock was installed on the lot one that's not municipal property, or got potential not to be a municipal site, we could see a one like we've got up in Sandy Lane, where you've got one dock going out and a series of docks off it. What I'm thinking of again is discussions very similar to what we had with Blue Heron, where you've got I guess a group of people sharing a particular resource, and what they do is they create a corporation, they buy that piece of property from the township, and the township can watch its hands of that particular piece of property. And then that also enables us to protect the township rights with regard to structures or dock structures being built on a right of way, which is what the big issue is here right now. So it'd be nice to see that explored before we actually sign off on allowing them to put dock structures on a municipal right of way.
Well, they already have them on the original road allowance, they are already there. They've been there since 1973. So
right.
one option would be to enter into a license of occupation for a shorter term. Usually license of occupations are renewed every 5 years and paid on an annual payment schedule. And we could do a limited license of occupation with a shorter term to investigate other things. Right now, as I say, we have nothing. So that would be my suggestion, is the license of occupation for a shorter period of time than our traditional 5 years, and investigate what other options that there are. Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I just want to perhaps caution against that on behalf of the applicants, because a license of occupation application does come with some considerable expense to be borne by the applicants. They're required to get a survey. They're not to mention legal fees, application costs, and stuff like that. So I just think if you're looking at getting into a shorter a license of occupation, maybe only permitting it for a short time, it may be considerable cost for them to put up front for that. And if I could comment on Larry's costs, that may be an option. I mean, Larry's comments, that may be an option. The applicants note that those docks are used by all backlot owners. And my understanding would be that lot one also there's right of ways over lot one for all backlot owners. On lot one, they likely can't construct anything without the permission of everybody who has an interest in that property. But if those docks are being used by everybody, that might be an option. And finally, Larry mentions that we could potentially divest ourselves of that property. That might be an option to explore too, if they wanted to form some sort of association to purchase lot one for the reason of installing a dock.
Deputy Mayor Kennedy, do you have a?
Yeah, I actually somewhat a little bit confused. I don't have any issue if they move those docks over to lot one. That's part of their deeded access to the water. Whatever the deal was in 1973, it was not unique in those years. I know my parents built a home on Bayshore Acres Road, deeded access. That was a backlot development, for lack of a better term. That seemed to be common practice at that time for backlot development. Squabbie Lake's another probably example. So lake at capacity is irrelevant. We've allowed developments to go on Long Lake, Musquabbie Lake for years and years, and now to penalize these people at this point is it's not correct in my way. So I'd like to find out a way to accommodate the needs of these people that they've had for 50 years, and yet still keep the municipality liability-wise safe. So I open to any kind of suggestion that allows these people to maintain their dockage, but maybe not in that area, or the number of docks based on our bylaws for setbacks, but to move forward to reach a compromise here.
That's a good point. And I just want to clarify with Jeff, because we had a license of occupation on Moose Lake with 3 property owners on 1 dock. And did they have to get a survey? You were referring to the cost of what's involved in license of occupation, but we already know where that's our land. It's an open road, it's a road allowance to the water, the 66 foot. Is it not just our standard agreement?
Historically, we've required surveys for this, for one, to prove that it is in front of our property. And again, with regards to setbacks, and the license of occupation is usually worded in a way that they are permitted a license of occupation for part one on plan, whatever. Looking back at that license of occupation on Moose Lake, I don't recall if they needed to do a complete survey, but I believe they did provide a survey sketch. Yeah, I can't recall specifically on that one.
Okay, I just like to do the same. And when I suggested a short term license of occupation as opposed to the 5 years, it was not to have them incur a lot of costs. It was to mitigate our risk while we investigated other options. So I guess we're at a bit of a standstill. Other suggestions? Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, that property on Moose Lake was surveyed.
Okay.
Also, I think there's going to be more of these coming up, and a decision to make a decision right here would be, acting too quickly for me. I think we've got to sit back and really think this out, because I think there's going to be more of this happening.
Okay, so Councillor Clark, Councillor Smith, Councillor Clark, you were suggesting that we divest of this property.
Yeah, but it sounds with the developer, he had that property specifically for them to access the water, and why they're not using it, I don't know. For some reason, maybe it's easier to access the municipal piece, but I think there's the insurance aspect of it in terms of people crossing the land, and there's, the build out, and there's the shared responsibility, and there's a whole bunch of different bits and pieces that it's best that we distance ourselves from. And rightly so, it may take a year to do this, but as Jeff has pointed out, there are costs even for a short term, even a 1 year agreement. While they do this, there are significant costs. But I think in terms of our looking at the long game, longer approach, we need a proper structure to deal with this, not just dealing with the one-offs in terms of putting a dock out on the right of way. The municipal right away. I think that's opening up too many issues.
Okay, Councillor Smith?
Thank you. A quick question, probably for Jeff. When did we introduce the $500 per year fee for getting a permit to put your dock on municipal property?
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Great question. That annual licensing fee is always set by council. The $500 fee is actually fairly recent. I believe the license of occupation on Moose Lake was $500 combined for 3 different docks. Since then, we've done one at our Sandy Cove boat launch, which was $500 per slip. So that's actually fairly recent, within the last few years.
And prior to the last few years, was it $200 a year? Or?
Well, to be honest, there is only one other license of occupation that council's ever granted for permission to put a dock on a municipally owned original road allowance. And I don't have that fee in front of me. I could probably try and look it up. That's right. Yeah. I'm not going to say the name, but I could probably find the license fee very quickly for us here.
That's where I don't recall that anyone had to do a survey. We know in the general vicinity. Like I say, right now, I just keep going back to the fact that we have nothing. We have no agreement with them, and there's docks there. And so I'm trying to get something in place for the short term to investigate the longer term. If we say we're going to divest of the 66 foot, then there's all of that, declaring the land surplus and getting it evaluated. And they would have to form an association, as you said, which that also takes time and corporate structure. It might be in the long run exactly the best thing to do, but that's a long way out. And is there, Jeff, anything you can see we can do in the short term that we could have some kind of agreement, whatever you want to call it, and then investigate the longer term?
The municipal process for legalizing the location of structures on municipal properties is a license of occupation. Is it possible to simplify the process? Sure. With regards to the survey and everything, I just would be concerned that perhaps these docks aren't in front of our property or are projecting out in front of the neighboring property owners and affecting other people's property rights. But we could simplify it so that they didn't have to get into an association. I think there's been talk of having them combine the docks into one with 4 slips. Well, perhaps that wouldn't be required at this time. As the applicants have requested, perhaps we don't require proof that they were there since 1977. It's all at council discretion.
Okay, Councillor Smith?
Yeah, thank you. So I think as Walt has indicated, this is clearly a complex matter, and it's not limited to this one situation. I would say though that I'm less concerned about finding a quick and dirty solution that's inexpensive for the people who've installed the docks. They haven't paid anything for years of usage of public property. And so if there's some expense that they need to incur now, well, it's time to catch up. I do like your concept of finding something that is short term, entering into a potential 5-year agreement at this point in time. I don't think would be the right thing to do. There's some important principles here regarding the protection of public lands and in fairness to all taxpayers. And so if you wanted to do something that gave these folks another year of usage through the 2021 season, they obviously need to pay a fine because they've been using our property without a permit. So there's a fine that's been levied. That'll have to be paid. They'll have to pay a fee for the use in 2021. And we need to do some further homework at our end and decide how many of these are going to be acceptable. Deputy Mayor Kennedy's comment about the capacity of Long Lake being irrelevant. According to the staff report, staff have concerns with the proposed request because it's well beyond recreational capacity. It's shocking here that the recreational capacity for Long Lake is 53 and there are 160 lots on the lake. Now I know, none of us were involved in that. But this isn't a marginal problem. There is a significant overcapacity issue on Long Lake. And for us to further jeopardize the water quality, by permitting additional development, that's not supposed to be there for years to come is just, out of the question. Water quality is only going to get better if we give up some things in cases like this where we're way beyond capacity. And, having had historical use doesn't mean that we should allow those violations to continue forever and ever. So again, a 1-year solution where they pay the fine, they pay the fee, and we develop an approach that's going to resolve this, not just for Long Lake, but for the other situations across Dysart, to me would be a reasonable step.
Okay, thank you for that. The resolution does say to direct staff to process a license of occupation agreement application. So it does not seem to be the desire of council, certainly the councillors I've heard from, and everybody's had an opportunity. So I'm assuming that is the direction to not process a license of occupation as we have it. But I'm wondering through Tamara or Barbara, if you have any suggestions in terms of some kind of agreement, whether we don't call it an official license of occupation, but something so that we can investigate further. Is there any suggestions, thoughts there?
Well, yeah, I don't know why you couldn't use the basis for the license of occupation agreement to capture the information you need. At least I'm sure it could be modified through the planning department to fit the situation.
Okay. Jeff, do you think that's a possible solution for a year? Because there's clearly a lot going on here, whether the lakes at capacity, the historical use, creating a lake or a road association, or that group at association. There's lots to investigate, and we've thrown a lot of different ideas. So I'm not clear on how we should be proceeding right now. And if I'm not,
and I guess I would just look for direction from council. Like, it's certainly possible for staff to go ahead with it, with an application process. However, there would be certain aspects of that application process that it sounds like council doesn't want to involve, given the short nature of this potential license. Yeah, we could process something and keep it simple, maybe cover our liability, recognize the existing location, as long as it is on our property, I suppose.
well, I think we should enter into some kind of agreement while we search for the long-term solution. Councillor Wood Roberts?
Would it be at all reasonable to do the license of occupation for 2 years? I mean, this season is pretty much done. They can use next season to try to get organized and we also have that time to get organized to make some sort of formal agreement or decide what we want to do with that piece of land.
Sorry, was that a question for me?
Well, it was a suggestion to go into 2 years. It's sort of it's not necessarily a question, it's a suggestion. And I think probably looking for other councillors' comments on that, to enter into something for 2 years. I mean,
we could certainly draft a license of occupation agreement for 2 years until the renewal period, and then it would come back for council discussion at that time.
oh, okay. I saw Councillor Smith and Councillor Kennedy.
I just wanted to note that 2-year period proposed by Councillor Wood Roberts was 2020 and 2021. In other words, this would still need to get resolved by the end of the next summer season. This is not to go to 2022. We need to step up and resolve this effectively in the next year.
Okay. Councillor Kennedy, Deputy Mayor Kennedy, pardon me.
I just need clarification. Are we talking about license of occupation for lot 1, plan 490, or for the open road allowance?
I believe the open road allowance, but Jeff?
Agreed. That's the request before us, is permission to put docks on our road allowance. I caution council with regards to the municipality's rights over lot 1, even though we have ownership of it. If the information provided by the applicant is correct, that all those backlot owners have deeded access over that, then we may not have total authority to grant that without permission from anybody who has interest in that property. So I would just caution that if that's something we're looking at, if there's any permissions for that property that we're trying to give, we may want to get a legal opinion on that.
Okay. So I think, so technically it would really be only 1 year or to December 31st, not that everybody's got their vote out by then, but 2021. And is council giving further direction to pursue what? What would you like staff to look into?
Other alternatives to make this some sort of final decision, so it doesn't come up every 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years for their license of occupation. See if there's a more
investing the property and selling it to a group. Is that something that council wants to pursue? I see a nod. I see 2 nods. So I think that's something that we want to look into, the possibility of declaring the land surplus, Obviously, we can't sell it to an individual, but we could sell it, well, we could, but anyway, we would be looking at selling it to a group. So in any correspondence back with the applicants, that they could pursue looking into, creating a corporation or okay. So I'm wondering if I should put that in the resolution. It says, I'll read the resolution first, then ask for a mover and seconder, and then ask if we should add to the resolution by putting the time on it. Be it resolved that council directs staff to process a license of occupation agreement application for use of original allowance for road between lots 5 and 6 and concession 4 in the geographic township of Dudley. So that is the resolution there. Do we want a limit and to limit the license for Councillor Smith?
Well, I'd be prepared to move that with the addition of the clause, for the period ending December 31st, 2021. So the license of occupation for the period ending December 31st, 2021.
Yep. Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Clark. So moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Clark. And we add in December 31st, 2021. We also give verbal direction to staff to pursue alternatives with those applicants, and let's have a conversation with them and see what comes up. Okay, all in favor? I didn't take a vote. That is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Algonsons need more time.
Thank you. So this application, or not application, request is for the Godson draft plan of subdivision request for extension. The draft plan approval will lapse on November 24th, 2020, and the owner is requesting 1-year extension to the draft approval in order to satisfy any outstanding conditions that they need to satisfy for the draft plan of subdivision approval. Staff have reviewed the request for the subdivision extension. Staff do not have any additional conditions or concerns related to the draft plan of subdivision. Council has any questions?
Any questions on this file? It's funny because I was just asking about it the other day because we see that at the county and land division, and I'm thinking that's going to expire. And then you mentioned that they're asking for more time. So any questions? Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Clark, Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that council supports a request by Gonson to extend draft approval for subdivision application 46T-12001. No additional municipal conditions are required. All in favor? That's carried. And Stothart subdivision.
Yes, thank you. The next item is a request to release lands held as security by the municipality for Plan 637, which is the Stothart Creek subdivision. The developer wishes to sell lot 15 on the plan of subdivision, which is currently held as the municipality by security under the subdivision agreement for that plan. The subdivision agreement was executed by the municipality on October 19th in 1992 and registered on title. Paragraph 20 of that agreement gives the municipality the absolute discretion to reduce the number of lots held by security. The agreement provides that for the purpose of security, that each lot shall be deemed to have a value of $20,000. The developer will be responsible for all costs related to the transaction. And as council may remember, we have done a couple of these over the last couple of years. Staff seek direction from council with regards to releasing lot 15 on the plan.
Okay, so any questions or comments on that? That plan has been around for a long, long time, and with land being at a premium and Dysart being a wonderful place to move to or live, or people are looking for places, it's really nice to see this development taking place. And I encourage any of you councillors to take a drive through there. There are some beautiful, beautiful homes in there. So, so this is great. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that upon payment of all outstanding taxes and fees, along with all legal costs and disbursements of the municipality for herein contemplated transfer, council agrees to reduce the number of lots held as security and release to the developer Lot 15, Plan 637 in the geographic township of Dysart, presently held as security under the subdivision agreement for the sum of $20,000 per lot, as outlined in the subdivision agreement. The mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to execute documents relating to the release of Lot 15, Plan 637. All in favor? And that's carried. So just looking at the clock and in light of how much time, Jeff, do you think you need on the zoning bylaw? This next, your last item.
I don't anticipate it should take too long, but it all depends on how many council questions there are and how much discussion we get into about the proposed changes.
Okay, so generally after usually about an hour and a half, plus I've been sitting here since 8 o'clock, I asked council if they would like a break. So just who wants a break, show of hands, and come back to this. Oh, already hands are up, so that's good enough. Let's recess for 15 minutes and we will reconvene at 10:40. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so we will just take a break, sit tight. Thank you. Okay, so we are back in session and that was a nice little refreshing break. And so we still have, there we are, Jeff and Chris with us, and we will review our zoning draft bylaw.
Thank you. Yep, as always, we save the best for last. But attached to this report is a draft zoning bylaw amendment to amend zoning bylaw 2005-120. I just want to advise council, this is the council's final opportunity to review the proposed amendments before it goes to the public meeting, which is this Friday. But this is good news as the process is nearing completion. So at the meeting on August 25th, or the council meeting on August 25th, council reviewed some public comments that were received at the open house and directed staff to make some changes to the bylaw. So attached to the council agenda today is a table showing 7 proposed amendments for council direction. The proposed changes include definitions related to a firewood processor and firewood processing operation. And these uses are proposed to be permitted in the general industrial zone, the extractive industrial zone, the rural type 1 zone, and the rural type 1 with limited services zone. The next change was a definition was added for inclined elevator. Up next, an updated definition of lot frontage to clarify that frontage for a waterfront lot and is measured in a straight line distance. I should note that illustration 2 has also been updated to show that frontage was measured in a straight line distance. And lastly, the provisions for waterfront zones limiting the gross floor areas of dwellings to 372 square meters for any one story has been removed. So those are the changes proposed. As per council direction, staff did review the minimum and maximum dwelling unit areas as well for surrounding municipalities. Staff also looked at whether these surrounding municipalities permitted tiny homes. I have attached a table to the report that just outlined, it was just a quick summary of my research. Regarding tiny homes, it should be noted that the local planners in the county met, I think it was a week ago yesterday, just to have discussions about upcoming changes at the county level to their official plan, and tiny homes was a subject that was discussed. So this appears to be happening at the county level, and then will filter down to the lower tier municipalities. So given this direction, staff have not proposed any changes to the zoning bylaw with regards to tiny homes. Regarding minimum dwelling unit sizes, the municipality is pretty consistent with the other municipalities. And again, given that discussion that's bound to happen with regards to tiny homes, staff did not propose any changes to the zoning bylaw with regards to our minimum dwelling unit area requirements. With regards to the maximum dwelling unit size, as you can see on the table, Dysart was the only one that really limited the maximum dwelling unit size in their bylaw. It appears that other municipalities relied on other provisions such as lot coverage, setbacks, that kind of thing, to limit the size of development on those lots. So given that, staff have removed, as mentioned, that provision from the waterfront zones, limiting the size of dwelling unit areas on any one story. It should be noted that the size of dwellings will still be regulated by lot coverage within our bylaw, as well as shoreland lot coverage and dwelling unit maximum percentage of a lot. Another change in front of council today is staff since the last council meeting received public comments concerning the environmental protection zone boundary around Elephant Lake. And this is in the vicinity of the Elephant Lake, York River, Baptiste Lake provincially significant wetland complex. The concerns identified inconsistencies between our EP boundary and the provincially significant wetland boundaries, which they are two different entities, but based on the official plan, staff are of the opinion that those comments are valid and are proposing amendments to Schedule A, Map 7, which is for Harborne, and Map 8, which is for Harcourt Township, to align the EP boundary with the provincially significant wetland boundaries around Percy Lake and Elephant Lake. So it is a bit of a significant change. Staff have attached maps to show the extent of these changes. The proposed amendments will change the zoning, I think, on roughly 15 properties around Percy Lake and 29 properties around Elephant Lake. So staff are looking for direction from council on this. In anticipation of the public meeting on Friday, the draft bylaw has already been updated to incorporate all the changes that I'm recommending today. So if there's something that council doesn't want to go forward, I request that direction today. And again, as I mentioned, this is the last opportunity for council to review the draft bylaw before it goes to the public meeting. Council will have further opportunities prior to approval, but if there's anything else that you would like changed prior to the public meeting, let me know. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Again, thank you for all your work to date, and I'm going to open up the floor. And first up is Councillor Donaldson. Unmute.
Hi, Jeff. Just a couple of quick questions on the tiny home thing. Did you check with Hastings Highlands, which is a neighboring county?
I did, actually. And are you talking with regards to tiny homes? Sorry?
Yes, yes.
And I didn't see that they had tiny home provisions. However, I did find articles saying that their council was looking towards making changes to permit tiny homes. So I did not find a bylaw that permitted them, but it does appear that they're going this direction.
Right. And so you said that Haliburton or the county is also looking at that. So who makes the first move? The county?
Typically, yes. So if the county, our official plan is required to be consistent and conform to the county's official plan. So when you put these policies in, it's better to start at the top, and then it'll have a bit of an umbrella effect down below. So once they make these changes, we will update our official plan if council so chooses to include them, and then we can update our zoning bylaw.
Okay, and one more thing is, why was it put in to not have tiny homes? Like, what's the reasoning? Do you know?
No, I don't, and that's a very good question. Yeah, I think tiny homes became more popular over the last 10 years. And I think it's just something that's slowly gaining traction for everybody. And it's something council may want to consider. Yeah, it's slowly gaining traction, and you can see more and more municipalities jumping on board. So it's just something council may want to think about of where they want them. And so that when this comes back, we have clear direction.
So what committee would, yeah. What
So
committee?
Councilor Donaldson, what part of the also is the definition of what is a tiny home, and we currently have a minimum size of the 800 square feet, which I suppose does not fit to whatever the definition of tiny home. I'm not actually even sure what that is. And I believe Jeff asked our building department, how many requests do we get for a 400 square foot home or 500 square, and it's practically non-existent. Whereas at the other end, we were getting requests for, and actually had someone at our public, the open house meeting discuss the maximum size in one level. And so we've actually taken out that and using other tools within our tool chest in terms of lot coverage, et cetera, for the large places. But in terms of the small places, we have very few building permits coming in, even in the 800 square foot range for dwelling. So, it does have to go a little bit by about what's needed here in the area. When it comes to condo units or apartment type units, that would be a different story. Or even in a townhouse type situation where it's all on one, on serviced property, on serviced land, that would be maybe a different story. But in terms of, there wasn't a desire to decrease the size from 800 square feet of our minimum size home at this time. There wasn't a demand for it. So
if we were the first ones to do it, then we would find out, because the people that are wanting the tiny homes, they obviously go somewhere else to build and buy property because it's not allowed in Haliburton County or like you said, Hastings. So there is somewhere that they're going, they're just not going where they're not, it's not allowed yet. So we won't know until we change it as to how much that affects the buyer of the property.
Or you could say as zoning bylaws change and change, minimally here and sometimes drastically over there, is because of demand. And we have not seen that demand coming through our building department for requests.
Okay.
I mean, the other option is someone can do a minor variance. That is one way. If they want to build a 500 square foot home, they still have the opportunity to. So I think that putting something in just because it's a catchy phrase right now is when we don't appear to seem to have that demand. We can still deal with, if someone wants to build under 800 square foot home, they have a tool that they can use, which is coming to the minor variance committee to build under the size. For now, maybe this is the direction things will change. It totally depends on if it's on service land within the village, on the sewers. But when it's on a, 2-acre lot on a municipal road somewhere, they generally are not wanting to build a 400 square foot home. It is being investigated at the county though. At this point, we didn't see a demand here at Dysart.
Okay.
So any other questions on some of the things? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Jeff, a question with regard to the firewood processing operations and the inclusion of this now as a permitted use in RU1 and RU1L zones. One possibility you had mentioned when there was like a presentation or delegation of this topic was maybe putting in some restrictions, if you like, in terms of where the firewood processing would be located. In other words, it needed to be set back a certain distance from a lot line so that there would be some buffer to neighbors in terms of the noise and so forth. So what happened there? What was your final perspective on that?
Yes, thank you, John. Great question. So the definition of a firewood processing operation does include that information. It notes that firewood processing operations are subject to site plan control. So similar to the site plan agreements, such as 10 Hops this morning that came forward, council will have the opportunity to make comments and address some of those impacts. What I also included in the definition that was typically our setbacks only apply to structures within our zoning bylaw, but I did include that the location and the operation shall comply with the setback provisions of the appropriate zone, so that this use does have to comply with the setbacks for the structures. So that's at minimum. Once we receive a proposal and a site plan agreement application, then we can work through the mitigating any other impacts such as noise, hours of operation, that kind of thing.
Now those would apply to projects going forward. What about those projects that are in place today?
It's a great question again. And the projects that are in place today, so anything that existed prior to law coming into effect would have, if it legally existed at that time, would have legal non-compliant status. So given the history of some of the uses that we've discussed at length here at council, have been received opinions that they are legal right now. So I would think those would have legal non-compliant status once this law is put in place.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Deputy Mayor Kennedy.
Yeah, Jeff, you mentioned the changes with the environmental protected areas on Elephant and Percy, and you mentioned that it may affect the properties. Could you just expand on what effect those changes in designation may have on those properties?
Yeah, and what it's doing, thanks Pat, great question. What it's doing, it's changing portions of these properties from what they're currently zoned, and in that table it shows it, whether it was from RU1L and EP to just add more EP to that property. It doesn't appear that this changes. I don't think it's changing any entire property. And again, similar to Councillor Smith's previous question, this law is not yet in place. So anything that legally existed at that time and in that location prior to the law coming into effect would have legal non-conforming status to be located in that EP boundary. So this really isn't taking away development rights, because the official plan already requires, and this is coming from the province, that no site alteration and no development is allowed to occur within these provincially significant wetlands. There was just a bit of a gap between our official plan and our zoning bylaw, whereas the law did not really reflect what the official plan was saying. So there could have been instances where if staff members did not know those policies existed in the official plan, a building permit could have been issued within those PSWs. So that is the reason for this change. But yeah, it doesn't appear to be removing anybody's development rights. It may alter them slightly, but everything should have legal non-conforming status where they currently sit.
Thank you.
Okay, and so if there are no further questions to Jeff, do you want to just explain the process of our meeting on the 25th?
Yes, thank you. Great question. So as council may know, we are having a special council meeting on Friday to discuss one topic in the morning, but in the afternoon, we will be having the statutory public meeting as per the Planning Act to look at two applications that Chris is bringing forward to amend the zoning for specific properties. And then we'll go into the full zoning review. It's going to be fairly similar to the open house. However, you won't have to listen to a big, long, boring presentation from me. I'm going to summarize some of the major changes. And any members of the public, I'm going to read all the public comments to date. And council should address each of those public comments. So the Planning Act does require that we are to address those comments. So I will read them all out. I do have a table of all the comments received. We already have addressed some of them by including the firewood operations, changing the lot frontage. So we'll go through all those. And then we can open it up to the floor to anybody who has pre-registered again. And we'll go through them one by one, similar to the open house, where we can allow them to provide comments and questions about the proposed policies, and council will have that opportunity to have that discussion with them. And once that's done, it's very similar to as if it were a specific property, but it's for our entire municipality. So.
And so at our open house, we did have some presentations, and so I sort of had them as chairing of the meeting, and I had them in order, so I was able to, we brought those people into the view. Is there an opportunity if a member of the public is watching now and wants to participate in the process? How do they do that?
Great question. Yes. So anybody watching today and wishes to have the ability to provide comments at that public meeting, you are required to pre-register. So please contact either myself or the municipal clerk, Mallory Bishop. You can go to the municipality's website on the planning and land information page. We have set up a detailed website for this zoning review. It has all the documentation, the draft bylaws, the proposed changes, the work schedule, everything there, plus all the contact information. So if you have any questions about pre-registering, please don't hesitate to give me a call.
Okay, and I'll check with the clerk how that works. So if someone has pre-registered for the meeting, we don't have any written submissions, but during the meeting wants to speak, is there a chat button that they can click and then they'll be informed that so-and-so is wanting to speak to an item?
There is a raise hand button, but we will provide you a list of all pre-registered attendees, yes, and we will bring them forward one at a time so that they will each have their own individual opportunities to make their comments. And I will leave it up to you as the chairperson to decide how you want to facilitate that conversation. Typically, we give them that 5-minute opportunity to make their comments and have that discussion with council. And once that's done, that they would be demoted to an attendee and still able to listen and listen to the conversations.
Well, it went very, very well in August, and so I anticipate that it will go well again this Friday. And I just want to treat it as if I'm looking out in a room full of people, as we've had at our other public meetings, and make sure that I don't miss out that if someone has that opportunity to speak. So that's great. And we do have a resolution to acknowledge receipt of the draft zoning bylaw. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Clark, Councillor Wood Roberts. Be it resolved, the council acknowledges the receipt of the draft zoning bylaw amendment and schedules concerning the general review of bylaw 2005-120, and further that council directs staff to proceed with the draft bylaw and schedules to the statutory public meeting on September 25th, 2020. All in favor? And that is carried. Excellent. Okay, thanks, Jeff and Chris.
Thank you.
For all that. And we will go back to our reports from local agencies and boards, which is under section 3. And again, we don't have minutes because they haven't been meeting regularly, but it's always good to hear an update on what's happening in your communities or the hall boards or the different organizations that we're on. So the Harcourt Hall Board, is there anything there, Councillor Donaldson?
Yep, we have a meeting tonight, but last council, there was a meeting after that night. So there's just a couple of things. A treasurer resigned, but the board agreed that they didn't need a treasurer or need a replacement. They received a $500 donation from a local resident, and the ladies were planning on putting on a bake sale, but you have to pre-order. And they requested operations cost, and they also were getting ahead of the game and asking about the satellite monitoring for the propane tanks, which they thought had been done, but it wasn't. So I believe that Andrew is looking into that to make sure it's done for this winter. And that's about it.
Okay, and you have a meeting tonight. And so were you talking about the bake sales that for they're doing pumpkin pies and things for Thanksgiving, and you need to call and arrange
Yes.
for pickup? Okay, I'll put that on my list. That's great. Good. And then next is West Guilford Hall.
Yep, we're supposed to be having a meeting a week today, actually, next Monday. And so we're hoping to be able to get restarted with some of the events and rentals. I had a question with respect to the revised regulations in terms of numbers of people at indoor facilities. Given that, neither the Harcourt nor the West Guilford recreation centers are really, maintained by municipal staff, what would be the limit in terms of the number of people now that would be permitted inside those facilities?
So this is, yes, is that a staffed facility or not? Tamara, do you want to help Councillor Smith out and myself with questioning about this?
Well, I think that's something, because it's new this weekend, we haven't met with the OC yet to look at it all in detail, but right now it's suggesting 10 people inside. We'll have to look at that interpretation and find out exactly what that means, whether that's within the community center or with an organized event where they're doing contact tracing, or if it's, I know for sure it's a private event, it's down to that, but I just suspect we'll be discussing that more this week, and we'll get that information out to the different community centers.
But our
Okay.
EOC meeting wasn't until October 1st, is that?
Oh, okay, then we're, yeah.
So it's not
we're
till the
gonna
week
have to-
after, so we may have to have a special EOC
Yeah.
meeting to interpret that. On the weekend,
Yes.
when that was coming down, and I referenced at the very beginning of the meeting, there was an event in the park. I contacted our MPP, and she wasn't even able to give me definitive answer on what staffed event or not, what that meant. So maybe that's something that we should be calling a special meeting just for that topic only.
I agree.
Yeah,
And
because a
the,
lot of organizations have things planned. A lot of people have things, and
Yeah, it would certainly be terrific to get clarity on that as quickly as possible. As I said, West Guilford was planning to restart some things, and we've had some requests even for small groups. But if we're limited to 5 people, for example, inside that hall, obviously maintaining a distance of 6 feet is not a problem. But if that's not good enough, those boards will need clarity in terms of what they can and cannot do.
it was 10 for indoors, but okay. So
Thank you.
at the end of today's Dysart meeting, maybe I will contact our fire chief and see if we can set up a special EOC meeting to discuss that issue and get clarification for anything. Okay, Rails End Gallery.
Yeah, there's a report submitted by Laurie Jones. They are staying busy. They've also put in a request for consideration for a reduced amount for using the upstairs at the community center. And this is to deal with, again, with COVID. What they do through the winter months for the seniors is they have knitting circles, ukuleles, and drumming. And I guess what they haven't got the space at the Rails End to even with a small group of 10, wherever to properly distance them and be safe. So what they've asked for is consideration for like $3 per attendee. I think there's a rationale. We're currently talking about doing that space based on $5 a person for going in. They would be walking in with a group, and it's an organized event through Rails End, which is part of our township. So I would ask that consideration be given to supporting the request for the $3 per attendee for their use of the space. Thank you.
Okay, and is there someone who would support that as well? Another councillor wanted to speak to that? Councillor Deputy Mayor Kennedy?
Yeah, I'd support that, perhaps maybe with a minimum charge in the event that they only had 2 or 3 people show up. We're still going to have cleaning responsibilities, but so I don't know, minimum charge of $25 or $20, something just to cover our cost to clean if there aren't enough participants. But other than that, I think it's a great move for us to help support the community.
Anyone else want to comment to that? Councillor Wood Roberts?
I just wondered if that was if it was going to interfere with the plan to rent like the small space for the internet usage.
So that was Mondays and Thursdays. So Friday is open at this point. That's probably why they chose it. So would we support that with a minimum of $20 fee? It could be more, but it can't be less.
Yes.
All right. There's not a resolution for that, or maybe there is.
There is. It's one choice or another.
Sorry, I had to get things in order because we did planning. So I'll just add that it be a minimum of $20 or $3 per person. Is there anything else you want to speak to? Because it also, the resolution includes adopting the rest of the report. Anything else that you want to speak to, Councillor Clark, on what's happening in Rails End?
No, it's good. This is normally stuff that would have been done at the Rails End, but like I say, they need a bigger space given the current COVID. And the things that are important to the seniors, they like their knitting circles. And ukuleles is great for them. So,
and we're going to need those connections, right? We need those things to do to keep our mind active and keep people engaged. I know it's still have to try to function as best we can. So can I have a mover and seconder for that then? So Councillor Wood Roberts and Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that Council acknowledges receipt of the July 2020 Rails End Gallery and Arts Centre report, and further that Council approves a rate reduction for the use of the A.J. LaRue Community Centre from $40 per hour to $3 per participant, or a minimum of $20 for the community programs held by Rails End Gallery and Arts Centre in fall 2020 and winter 2021. All in favor? And that's carried. I'm just adding that in. Next is BIA, and Councillor Wood Roberts, you want to speak to the BIA?
Well, soon they'll be doing the fall decorating that they do all around town. They do a lovely job. Meeting is next Tuesday, actually. It's the last Tuesday of the month. And I think stores are reasonably busy still at this point. It's starting to get a bit cold for some of the evenings on the outdoor patios. So we'll see where that goes. And that's about it right now.
So the patios, the EOC said till, I believe it was October 4th. So that's, it didn't go to Thanksgiving weekend because it was felt by then look how cold it already is getting, and October 4th is the Sunday, and that gives them the season. I know I've talked with one of the business owners at McKeck's, and they're asking already about next year. So maybe you can be having some talk with them. I said the first step is AGCO needs to give us permission again to do what we did, which was to permit their license to extend onto parking spaces. And then I think council would have to look at what the fee would be, because we waived all parking downtown this summer for July and August. But fingers crossed, we're not having to be in that situation next year. We would charge for parking. So there would probably be some kind of fee in lieu of
Parking
taking
spaces.
those parking spaces. But I have to say, even, yesterday driving through town at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was several people out on the patio enjoying the sunshine, and it's really added to the vibrancy. I'd love to see a way to get it forward, but January, February is the time to be planning for it and not hopefully do a last minute request. So you want to take that forward to the BIA, we'd be welcome to anticipate a request, but let's get it in early. Aging well, you probably haven't met. No. Harvest Halliburton, anything there?
No, we have a meeting next week. Or no, sorry, the 29th we meet.
Okay, and farmers market in the village goes, I know it's not Harvest Halliburton, but they do support that and promote that. That goes until
October 4th.
6th, maybe?
6th, yeah.
I don't have a calendar in front of me either, but
Yeah, the Tuesday.
October 4th was Sunday. It was, yeah. So,
Tuesday.
okay, so that means it's on this afternoon. Source protection planning.
Nothing.
No, all those things are on the back burner. Water management partnership. No. And lastly, the Halliburton Village Bioenergy Corporation. I owe a phone call to Jamie, Stephen, and Tamara. We can connect on that later this afternoon to respond to Jamie on that. But nothing else further to report. Okay, so next is recommendations from Committee of the Whole, which is a very detailed report, and I'm very glad I only have to read what's in bold, which is the recommendation. But before I ask for mover and seconder, is there anything in that report that you wanted to speak to one last time? And if not, then I'll need a mover and seconder. Councillor McKechnie and Councillor Smith. Be it resolved that the recommendations from the September 8, 2020 meeting of the Dysart et al. Committee of the Whole be adopted by Dysart et al. Council. All in favor? And that is carried. And there's on item 7 now we're down to, which is reports, excuse me, and recommendations from standing committee. And there is a report from the Personnel Committee. Any questions on that? Councillor Wood Roberts.
Just in the minutes, I'm still listed on there as a member, and actually Walt replaced me on that.
Excellent. That'll be duly noted, and you were not there and Walt was. I just wonder if anybody wants to speak to the recommendation about the hire. Councillor Kennedy or Pat?
That's
I'm
right.
sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Rob brought up this issue, for lack of a better word, this winter with the snow plowing and the sand, the backhoe. We use remote locations usually, and that's those backhoes and equipment are accessed by multiple organizations or businesses. And it's felt with the COVID and possible exposure that it'd be better if we kept the things as isolated as possible using our own staff. It will mean that there's going to be some extra time as far as sanding operations, because rather than getting filled up at the remote locations, they'll be deadheading back to the main municipal yard to get filled using municipal staff and municipal equipment. So just to be forewarned, there may be some delays, but we felt that with the possibility of exposure and losing portions of our total operations, that this was a viable alternative to the status quo.
Yeah, I think everybody's really thinking ahead, and we have to think longer term than back in March. We were probably, some of us were thinking that things might be back a bit to normal, and now we're thinking in 6-month increments as opposed to month to month. And I really appreciate that Rob thinking this and looking after our staff that way. So if there's no further questions, I'll need a mover and seconder to support the recommendation from personnel. Councillor Clark and Councillor Wood Roberts. Be it resolved that council supports the recommendation from the Personnel Committee that an additional equipment operator be hired for the 2020-2021 winter maintenance season, more precisely from November 2nd, 2020 to April 16th, 2021. And further, that all wages, benefits, and training costs associated with hiring an equipment operator be funded by the Safe Restart Agreement. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. And that's our last item in open session. So I do have a resolution to adjourn the open session and a regular meeting and to go into closed. If I may, looking for a mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Kennedy, and seconded by Councillor McKechnie. Be it resolved that council adjourn its regular meeting at 11:20 to discuss matters pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended pertaining to a proposed disposition of land by the municipality in the township of Dysart and Guilford, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting a municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. So to those of you watching, thank you for attending our council meeting today, and we'll now be in closed session.
Just doing it now.
Okay, that's good. So we're live? Yes. And we're back in open session. So all that is left for today is to confirm the proceedings of today's meeting. So I would need a mover seconder, please. Councillor Donaldson, Deputy Kennedy. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-59 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular council meeting held on September 22nd, 2020 be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached hereto. All in favor? Okay, that is carried. And then lastly, adjournment. Anybody? Is that Walt's hand up or just moving your iPad? I think that was Councillor McKechnie and Councillor Smith. Be it resolved, the council adjourn its regular meeting held on September 22nd, 2020 at 1:43 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff and
Thanks, everyone.
councilors. Have an excellent day and see you soon.